All right, today we are winding the clock all the way back. All the way back to the very first moments of existence. We're going to uncover a cosmic creation story that happened in less time than it takes to brew your morning coffee, but it literally set the stage for, well, everything. So let's just jump right into this, because it's a fantastic paradox. You've got a brand new universe, and it's absolutely brimming with energy and all the basic building blocks of matter, protons and neutrons. It has all the right stuff. And yet, for the first few minutes, it was a total failure at building anything. Not a single stable thing can be made. So what on earth was going on?
Well, our story kicks off just 1 second after the Big Bang. And you gotta understand, this is not some calm, orderly place. It is a chaotic, unbelievably hot soup of fundamental particles.
I want you to picture a cosmic particle accelerator on steroids. You have protons and neutrons, basically the Lego bricks for atoms, and they're just bouncing around like crazy. The whole goal here is to get them to stick together, specifically to get one proton to bind to one neutron. But there was this one enormous problem standing in the way.
And that problem? It was just a numbers game. For every single pair of a proton and neutron, the very things trying to team up, there were 20 billion photons of light just zipping around. And we're not talking gentle sunlight here. This was a firestorm of pure, high-energy gamma rays. So this insane flood of photons created a massive traffic jam for creation, a problem that physicists have a great name for, the deuterium bottleneck. And it all revolved around the very first, most basic thing the universe was trying to build. Meet the deuteron. This is it, the simplest possible nucleus you can make. Getting a proton and a neutron to stick together and form this little guy is the absolute first step on the ladder to building bigger atoms. But in the searing heat of the early universe, this first step was unbelievably fragile.
Okay, so here's the issue. A deuteron is held together by a specific amount of energy, kind of like cosmic glue. But remember those 20 billion photons hanging around every pair of particles? The universe was so incredibly hot that in that massive crowd, there were always more than enough high-energy photons acting like wrecking balls, just waiting to smash any new deuteron right back into a free proton and neutron.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It was a complete cycle of futility. The universe could create something for a split second, but it couldn't build anything. Two particles would fuse, and bam, a photon would just blast them apart. It was one step forward, one step back, over and over again. And all this time, a really important clock was ticking in the background. See, free neutrons, when they're left all on their own, they're unstable. They actually decay and turn into protons. So as the universe was stuck in this demolition derby, its supply of one of the most critical ingredients for building atoms was slowly vanishing, shifting the ratio from about 1 neutron for every 5 protons down to 1 for every 7. But the universe always has one trick up its sleeve, right? It's always expanding. And because it's expanding, it's always cooling down. And as that temperature dropped, well, that changed everything. So you can see it here. For the first few minutes, it was just way too hot. And all the while, those precious neutrons were decaying away. But then, at 4 minutes and 20 seconds, the universe finally hits this Goldilocks moment. Everything was just right. This was the tipping point. The universe cooled down just enough that even the most energetic photons didn't have the punch to break a deuteron apart anymore. The wrecking balls were finally disarmed. And for the first time ever, this fragile little nucleus could actually survive. The bottleneck was broken. The floodgates for nuclear fusion were just thrown wide open. What happened next was just this breathtakingly fast and furious chain reaction. With deuterons finally able to stick around, the universe raced to build something way, way stronger. Something that could really last. And this was the grand prize, the alpha particle. You probably know it as a helium nucleus. And look, if a deuteron was like a rickety wooden shack, the alpha particle was an absolute nuclear fortress. Its stability comes from this enormous binding energy. It's more than 10 times stronger than that fragile little deuteron. Once an alpha particle was formed, there was nothing in the universe at this stage that could even hope to break it apart. It was here to stay. You can almost see this frantic process happening in the data. These intermediate nuclei, things like deuterons and tritons, they'd pop into existence, but they wouldn't last. They were immediately gobbled up as building materials to construct those super stable alpha particles.
Now, this is maybe the most amazing part of the whole story. This entire universe-defining frenzy of creation, the forging of basically all the helium that will ever exist, it was over in, and I mean this literally, a flash. So get this. The whole thing stopped almost as quickly as it started. 10 seconds. That is all it took. From the moment the bottleneck broke at 4 minutes and 20 seconds to the moment it all just ground to a halt at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So the question is, why? Why did it stop so suddenly? Well, the conditions that made that fusion party possible, they just vanished. And the main reason? All the free neutrons, the absolute key ingredient that let the whole fusion chain happen, had been captured. They were now all safely locked away inside those indestructible alpha particles. Without any free neutrons floating around, the next logical step would be to fuse a proton with one of those helium nuclei, or maybe smash 2 helium nuclei together. But that leads to a cosmic dead end. It turns out that nuclei with a total of 5 or 8 particles are incredibly unstable. They fall apart almost instantly. So fusion just hit a wall. It couldn't climb the ladder to heavier elements. The party was over. And there you have it. After just 10 seconds of absolutely furious creation, the fundamental elemental recipe of our entire cosmos was locked in, and it would stay that way for hundreds of millions of years. When all the dust settled, the universe was left with a very, very simple ratio. For every one of those helium fortresses, the alpha particles, that it had built, there were about 12 protons left over that never found a neutron to partner up with. And this simple ratio is what set the stage for everything to come. When you do the math, that 1 to 12 count of particles translates directly into a universe where, by mass, about 75% is hydrogen and 25% is helium. That frantic 10-second race against time literally defined the cosmic recipe for eons. And that leaves us with one last big thought. This simple recipe of hydrogen and helium, it wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. It was the beginning. These were the only ingredients the universe had to work with. And the elements forged in this very first fire would become the fuel for every single star that would ever shine, setting the stage for the galaxies, the planets, and eventually for us.